Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are taking a really fascinating and I think necessary journey. We're looking at the new architecture of contemporary American religious media.
It's a huge topic.
It is. And our mission today is super focused. We want to go beneath the trending videos, get past the algorithms, and really get into the core messaging that is capturing and holding the attention of these younger, hyper-connected audiences.
And it's a crucial analysis to make right now because the traditional idea of the pulpit, as we've noted for decades,
Right.
it's fundamentally changed.
Yeah, it's gone.
It's basically a stage now, a stage built entirely for cameras.
Right.
And every piece of content, whether it's a sermon, an interview, a talk,
Yeah.
it's all created with the expectation that it's going to be immediately chopped up.
Edited down, clipped, quoted, reposted.
Instantly. And the sources make a really sharp point here. These dense, complex theological ideas, they're being intentionally translated.
Into what they call handles.
Exactly, handles.
That's such a powerful image. It's not the whole tree trunk of theory. It's just something manageable you can actually grip.
Yes, a slogan, a framework, a memorable phrase that you can actually carry with you.
And apply it through your week.
And that translation, that's the engine of its success. But the deeper question is, why is this genre thriving now?
Yeah, what's the hunger?
What is the hunger? Because we have to recognize that this media is responding to some really intense modern pressures.
Well, like what?
Well, we live in a world that's defined by, maximum information but minimum stability.
I think everyone listening can relate to that feeling. It's just too much noise, not enough meaning.
Exactly. You see this fragmentation of identity, a profound erosion of trust in, basically all major institutions, and just this chronic anxiety that's fueled by information overload.
It's exhausting.
It is. So we have to look past the platform, whether it's YouTube or TikTok or whatever comes next,
Right.
and see the core hunger at work.
Yeah.
People are desperate for coherence.
Coherence. In an unstable world, they're not just looking for a feel-good message.
No, not at all. They're looking for a structural explanation for why they feel so lost.
It's the difference between asking for a map to get through one specific intersection and asking for a whole philosophy of map making that helps you understand all maps forever.
That's a great way to put it. So we're not just looking at successful content today. We're looking at how that content is fulfilling a critical, unmet need for structure.
Okay.
Which brings us to the core tension we really need to unpack. I think it defines the entire movement.
That is it.
It's this shift. How has faith moved from being framed primarily as restraint, a system telling you what not to do, designed to contain desire?
The guardrails.
The guardrails, yes. To being framed as architecture or orientation, a comprehensive template for how to build a whole integrated life.
That's a huge shift. From don't do this to here's how you build.
A massive shift.
Yeah.
And we see this tension reflected perfectly across the three major currents that are defining this new landscape.
Okay, so let's unpack this first current. It hits immediately where people are, I think, often most vulnerable.
Relationships.
But this goes way beyond simple dating advice, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This entire current is designed to address, really, emotional instability. It's targeting the deep anxiety that comes with, infinite choice and intimacy in the modern world.
And the fundamental question it's trying to answer is what?
It's, how do I love someone deeply without completely losing the structure of myself?
Without dissolving into the other person.
Exactly. And the power of this current, which is kind of unexpected, comes from its confidence to engage with pop culture, not retreat from it.
Which is the old model, right? Just condemn and retreat.
Right. But these sources, they note that modern religious teaching, it treats the constant flow of online relationship aesthetics. All the idealized images of romance, codependency framed as destiny.
The couple goal stuff.
All of it. It treats that as a rival religion, and it critiques it with precision because the speaker knows the audience has already been absorbing that secular liturgy for years.
That's such a fascinating inversion. So instead of just saying the culture is bad, they confront these celebrated models head on.
They do, arguing that they are often performative, highly unstable, and at their core, spiritually hollow.
And what's the main indictment? What's the core critique?
The critique is sharp. These models sell the image of love. They sell the emotional high.
But with zero architecture to sustain it.
Zero. They argue that the false promise of these secular models is that they train you to seek a partner who will complete you, heal you, validate you, rescue you.
And then call that dependency destiny.
Yes. You are demanding that one flawed human being perform the function of a god, and you are setting them up for massive failure and eventually resentment.
So what's the theological reframing? How do they counter that?
It's beautifully pragmatic. The key insight is that before a human partnership can be successfully about love, it has to first be about formation.
Formation of the individual.
Of the individual. Before there's a couple, there has to be a whole person who knows their own coordinates.
So a healthy relationship, then, is defined not as a cure for your brokenness.
No, it's a robust collaboration between two formed people. And collaboration, by its very nature, it requires structural supports.
Which shifts the listener's focus completely. It's not about this frantic external search for the one.
It's about the disciplined internal task of becoming the kind of person who can actually sustain a partnership without collapsing it under the weight of your own neediness.
Okay, this is where it gets really practical. Our source material outlines a 5-part framework. They call it a spiritual diagnostic. It details what a person should possess, or at least be actively building, before they even think about pursuing intimacy.
And we need to emphasize, these aren't a rigid, impossible checklist.
Right, they're not a test you have to pass.
They're structural supports. They're the load-bearing walls of a mature self. And for each one, we have to look at the psychological trap that comes from neglecting it. That's what makes this content so sticky. It pinpoints the real pain people feel.
Okay, let's start with number 1. Place, existential location.
Right.
This means knowing where you are and not just, your address.
No, existentially. What season of life are you in? What unfinished business are you carrying around? What painful pattern are you actively avoiding?
It's a refusal to just drift, to be ambiguous about your own reality.
And the trap here is, I think, one of the most common drivers of early relationship failure. The source says a surprising number of relational disasters begin as simple disorientation.
People fall in love while they're lost.
Exactly. Expecting the other person to be the map they failed to read for themselves, they attach for escape.
Escape from what?
Loneliness, boredom, professional stagnation, distraction from a painful past. You name it.
That's where that incredible phrase comes in. They call it connection, but it is often escape wearing perfume.
That's it.
Can you give us a concrete example of that? How does that actually manifest?
Oh, sure. Think about the person who just got laid off, or is going through a family crisis, or just ended a long-term partnership. And they immediately throw themselves into a new, intense relationship.
Without pausing to process.
Without any pause. They haven't anchored themselves in their new reality. They're using the intensity of the new connection, the dopamine rush, the late-night talks, as transportation out of a painful season.
The other person is an emotional ferry ticket.
A ferry ticket, that's perfect. They're asking the new partner to validate a new self they haven't even finished building yet.
So the source says the resolution has to be an absolute refusal to drift.
It's non-negotiable. Stop using romance as transportation. Stop asking another person to carry you into a life you refuse to build yourself.
That's a tough pill to swallow, but it's the prerequisite for maturity.
It is, which leads to number 2, purpose, direction, and meaning.
And this isn't just about your career, right?
No, it's deeply. It's the internal sentence that organizes your choices. The why that directs your day-to-day life. It provides crucial containment for the self.
Because without it, what happens? The relationship replaces your identity.
Always. Two uncertain people collide. They share the same fundamental emptiness, and they call the intensity of that collision fate.
What they mistake for depth is just shared intensity.
Shared intensity.
Yeah.
Clinging. Because when your purpose is outsourced, you become totally dependent on your partner to give you a sense of worth and direction. You're constantly asking, what do we do now? Who am I in relation to you?
So what's the diagnostic question here? The gut check.
It's brutally honest. If I had zero romantic attention, would I still know what I'm here to do?
Wow. That is a powerful internal check.
And if the answer is no, the source argues the relationship might not actually be love. It might be hunger.
Hunger.
And hunger, they define, is a dangerous architect. It means you're trying to consume the other person to satisfy a need for meaning that only, a connection to something transcendent can actually fulfill.
That flows right into number 3, which I think is a sticking point for a lot of people in our culture. Provision. Stewardship of resources. Now, wait. Isn't telling anxious young people they need provision just reinforcing this idea that you have to be financially stable before you deserve love?
That is a fair and important challenge. But the source is really explicit here. This is not purely a financial mandate.
Okay.
While financial responsibility is part of it, provision really means managing what's in your hands, your time, your specific gifts, your current opportunities, your emotional bandwidth. It's about demonstrating responsibility, not wealth.
So it's the difference between need and entitlement.
Exactly. The trap is entering a relationship as a dependent child demanding adult benefits.
You're hiring a partner as an unpaid manager.
An unpaid manager to fix your discipline, your chaotic finances, your emotional instability. And that turns romance into a project of endless repair for the partner.
Who then becomes totally exhausted.
Emotionally exhausted. The spiritual dimension here is recognizing that life is not a desert. You have been carried. You've been given tools, community, breath. It's about refusing to believe you're abandoned or without capacity. You steward what you have, even if it's minimal, before you can share yourself maturely.
So it's about internal competence, not your external net worth.
That's it. Which brings us to number 4, which is arguably the psychological center of the whole framework. Identity, internal naming.
Knowing who you are without outsourcing the answer.
And without confusing being wanted with being worthy.
This resonates so strongly in a culture that's addicted to external validation. The trap here is building yourself entirely on someone else's attention, which the source calls building on weather.
Because attention is inherently unstable, it shifts. And if you're exchanging attention like currency and calling it intimacy, what happens when that currency devalues?
Your whole foundation just crumbles.
We see this so clearly after breakups. The person loses their partner, but what they really lose is their self-definition. Because they never had one that was independent of the relationship. They were known as a couple, and now the self is just a vacant lot.
So identity means you can be loved without being possessed.
And you can love without needing to dominate. It means your partner is not proof that you matter.
The confrontation is so direct. If you don't know who you are before the relationship, you will use the relationship to avoid finding out.
And then you'll blame the partner for the confusion you brought into the system in the first place.
Oof. Okay, so finally, number 5, parameters. Boundaries as load-bearing walls.
Right. This is about setting your moral and emotional architecture before desire or panic or loneliness sets them for you.
Because parameters are often seen as these rigid, suffocating rules, right? Especially in a culture that values impulse.
But the source reframes them as essential protective measures. Their function is to keep love from becoming fragile or purely impulse-driven.
So they define things like fidelity, respect.
And what lines you won't cross, not just physically, but emotionally. Even when you are lonely or aroused or deeply angry, they are the commitment to your own self-respect that actually guards the commitment to the other person.
And here's the reality check they introduce that just shatters the romantic ideal. The fantasy that love automatically produces goodness.
Is profoundly dangerous. The argument is the opposite. Love amplifies what is already in you.
If you bring in chaos, love makes more chaos.
If you bring maturity, love amplifies maturity.
Yeah.
Parameters are what keep love from becoming a weapon of mutual destruction.
So when you look at all 5 of those together, place, purpose, provision, identity, parameters, they all point to one single conclusion.
They do. They all converge on one theological refrain for this entire current. If God is not enough for you, no human being will be enough for you.
That is so anti-romantic in the pop culture sense, but it's also deeply pragmatic and emotionally responsible.
It's not a statement about affection. It's a powerful anti-idolatry statement. It recognizes that the deepest craving in the human heart is for completion, for the answer to our existential anxiety, and no flawed, finite human can provide that without being utterly crushed.
So demanding that ultimacy from a relationship, it turns your partner into a savior.
And that savior, as the source so vividly puts it, inevitably becomes a resentful prisoner, because they cannot bear that weight. They didn't sign up to fix your life, they signed up to share it.
This whole genre just thrives because it promises clarity. It embeds spirituality right into your daily life. It's not detached doctrine.
It's an instruction set for emotional maturity, framed as a spiritual necessity. And it leaves you with a question that cuts deeper than any dating advice.
It shifts the entire focus.
Completely, away from the external search and toward internal formation. The question is, are you looking for a person, or are you looking for a substitute God? For many, that is the beginning of a real reorientation.
That's a powerful transition, because if that first current gives us the architecture for internal wholeness...
What happens when that whole person is still stuck?
Right.
That's where the momentum message comes in. We pivot now to the second major current, which tackles stagnation and the anxiety of underachievement.
And the core question here isn't about love, it's about capacity.
It's, do I have enough skill, enough time, enough resources to actually move forward?
And the tone shifts dramatically here. It's not the intensity of relational critique. It begins with profound reassurance.
It's invitational.
Very invitational. It meets you right at the point of exhaustion.
Yeah.
Where you feel like your effort is wasted and you're stalled out, whether that's in your career, a creative project, or just, daily discipline.
The message right off the bat is designed to lower your defenses. It's, you are not as behind or as under-equipped as you think you are.
Yes. The logic is that the problem isn't a lack of effort. It's a fundamental misreading of your own reality. People feel chronically empty, believing they're waiting for some permission slip or a huge external influx of resources.
That has already been given. It's already there. So the speaker doesn't immediately prescribe, work harder. They prescribe perspective.
The goal is to reframe your story from one of waiting to one of latent readiness.
Exactly. And this current often pivots around a very familiar biblical scene, the feeding of the thousands.
Right. Huge crowd, massive need, laughably small amount of food.
A classic story. But it's reframed here as a precise diagnosis of modern psychology.
That reframing is everything. So the crowd, the overwhelming demand, that becomes the pressure of scale.
The feeling that the expectation on you is always larger than your capacity. The world demands brilliance and productivity, and you have, 5 little fish?
Exactly. And the loaves and fish, those represent what you habitually dismiss as insufficient.
Your limited time, your incomplete skills, your modest financial resources, your small network. We spend all our time staring at the scale of the need instead of the capacity that's already in our hands.
And the sermon's crucial insight. The mistake, the sin, is not the lack itself.
No. The mistake is the paralyzing assumption that your lack disqualifies you from being used or from moving forward.
Which leads to the central, really empowering claim of this whole message. What you are waiting for, the breakthrough, the resources, is already within your reach.
This just instantly undercuts that painful feeling of perpetually waiting for some grand external rescue.
Or a lottery win.
Or a lottery win, yeah. It flips the conventional understanding of success on its head. We usually think abundance has to come before the calling. You get the resources, then you can act.
But this theology says the opposite.
It says calling precedes abundance. You're not chosen because you have more. You are trusted because you are willing to bring what you have, however small it seems.
The miracle doesn't start with the multiplication.
It starts with presentation. You have to bring the limited resources forward first and commit them to the purpose.
This makes the language of stewardship central again. It connects right back to what we were just talking about with relationships.
It does. What is in your hands? That limited time, those ordinary skills, your small platform. It's not random. It's an assignment.
It's not a placeholder until something better comes along. It is the raw material.
And this confronts a core, paralyzing belief that so many modern people have, that they are perpetually underfunded by the universe or by God.
As if they got the scraps while everyone else got the real tools for success.
Right. And the source argues that this belief isn't humility. It's distrust disguised as realism. It's a paralyzing belief that justifies inaction.
This is where we get that instruction that travels everywhere across this media. Stop staring at what you don't have.
Start opening the drawer.
And that drawer metaphor is so crucial. Why?
Because it implies proximity, ownership, and neglect. The issue is not that the resource doesn't exist, it's that you haven't bothered to take responsibility for what you already own.
It's forgotten.
It's forgotten. Maybe it's a talent you haven't used in years, a half-finished project, a contact you failed to follow up on, or an hour of focused time you waste every day. The issue is mismanagement, not absence.
So if I stop waiting for the cosmic permission slip and I actually look in the drawer, what am I most likely to find?
You find the things you're competent at, but you undervalue. You find the uncomfortable conversations you've been avoiding. You find the small, disciplined habit that you know would change everything if you just commit to it for 60 days.
Those are the loaves and fish.
They're boring, they're small, but they are yours.
That defines this empowerment theology perfectly. It's not self-worship or some kind of narcissistic affirmation.
No, it's agency anchored in divine intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
You are told you can do what you are called to do with what you already carry. It's an optimistic view of humanity as carriers of unrealized necessary capacity.
And this motivational language gets translated into 3 concrete spiritual pillars, right? To ground it in something more durable than just hype.
Exactly. 3 pillars that turn the feeling into action.
Let's walk through them.
The first one is fundamental. Calling precedes confidence. The source argues that confidence is a lagging indicator.
You don't wait until you feel 100% ready.
You don't. You respond to the calling, and readiness follows in the active response. That paralyzing desire to feel fully qualified. It's often just fear asking for a theological excuse.
That's a great line. It's a sophisticated way to justify paralysis by demanding a guarantee of success before you start.
Right. Then the second. Authority is given, not earned. You move forward because you were sent, because the purpose is bigger than you, not because you negotiated your way up from a position of lack.
Which is how the modern corporate world trains us to think. Authority is something you have to achieve and earn through metrics.
This flips that entirely. If you wait to earn authority, you might never start. But if you recognize that the mission itself provides the necessary authority, it removes the burden of proving yourself worthy before you can move.
It shifts the question from, do I deserve to start, to, was I asked to go?
Precisely. And the third, multiplication, happens in motion. This is the spiritual principle of leverage. What stays clenched in your fist stays small.
What's released, used, and dedicated, that's what grows.
Potential is activated through surrender and use, not through hoarding and careful protection.
If the 5 fish stay in the hands of the boy, they feed 1 boy.
But when they're presented and dedicated to the need, they feed thousands. The lesson is simple, but so counterintuitive. The way to increase your capacity isn't to protect what you have, but to release it.
The emotional effect of this current is just profound. People feel reframed. Their stagnant season is reinterpreted as preparation, not punishment.
Their ordinary skills are reclassified as latent instruments.
And this current introduces a powerful, usable new language for sin. In this framework, sin isn't just moral failure, rule breaking.
It's mismanagement.
And that's a devastating reframing because it speaks directly to that anxiety of underachievement. It defines sin as forgetting what you were given, burying your potential out of fear.
Or calling disobedience patience and calling avoidance wisdom.
Can you give a concrete example of that? How does avoidance get dressed up as wisdom?
Oh, a prime example is the creative person who refuses to publish or launch their project because it's not perfect yet.
I know that person.
We all do. They hide the work, calling it discernment or taking the time to ensure quality. But the reality, the source argues, is that they're mismanaging the gift out of fear of criticism. They're burying the potential.
Or the person managing their anxiety through endless consumption of news, social media, small pleasures, instead of applying that time to their purpose.
That is mismanagement of time and attention. The listener is instantly recast. You're not helpless. You are entrusted. You're not self-made. You're a steward of something larger.
This message travels so well because it speaks directly to that dread that time is passing and meaning is slipping away, and it answers that fear without being condescending.
It doesn't say try harder. It says look closer at what you already carry. And it closes with that dual question, both comforting and intensely demanding, forcing immediate agency.
What if the breakthrough you're waiting for is not ahead of you, but already inside your reach, waiting for you to take responsibility for it?
And that brings us to our third current. If the first two dealt with the mechanics of our internal lives, love and purpose, this one deals with the nature of reality itself.
This is the quietest one, right? The most intellectually demanding, but maybe the most vital for long-term integration.
I think so. It's what the sources call visual theology and the recovery of depth. It addresses conceptual poverty, the deep need for meaning.
And the core question here is the most fundamental of all. What kind of reality am I actually dealing with?
This approach is revolutionary because it assumes that modern people need to be trained in patience and conceptual depth. Not because they're incapable, but because the pace of modern life has untrained them. It actively resists simplification.
So the screen or the audio fills with metaphors, historical context, illustrations.
Right. The mind needs a second visual language to grasp what our everyday words have flattened.
Because the core conviction here is that so many religious misunderstandings today aren't from disbelief. They're from shallow, inadequate definitions of key terms.
People are rejecting a caricature of the faith.
So the goal isn't to motivate or reassure, it's to earn trust through intellectual clarity.
And they tackle the biggest, most misunderstood words first. One of the most critical is holiness.
Okay. In everyday speech, especially in America, what does holy even mean?
What do you think?
It usually means, moral niceness. Being clean, well-behaved, maybe just really old and serious. It's a word we use to describe a lack of fun.
Exactly, it's been reduced. And that reduction completely misses the ancient root and the power of the concept. The linguistic roots of the word mean set apart.
Distinct. Other.
Other. Holiness isn't just better than on an ethical scale, it's a category shift. It is fundamentally different. It's what can't be domesticated or managed easily.
So how do you take that abstract, transcendent concept and make it intelligible for a modern audience?
They use the sun metaphor.
The sun metaphor. Walk me through it.
Well, it's perfect because it holds the paradox. The sun is the source of all life on Earth, right? Its light reveals the world, its warmth sustains us. It is profoundly, undeniably good. But the sun is also overwhelmingly dangerous. You can't approach it casually. You can't touch it without consequence. Its goodness does not make it safe.
And that is the paradox of holiness.
That's it. Divine presence is the source of all life and goodness, but it is not adjustable to human comfort. It gives life, but it also exposes and burns away what cannot survive its intensity.
We confuse goodness with predictable safety. Holiness is not something you can just domesticate into niceness.
If holiness were only niceness, it would just comfort us. But because it is otherness and intensity, it must also transform us. It demands awe, not just approval.
And this reframing immediately changes how we view ancient religious laws, rituals, all those boundaries and sacred spaces.
Yes.
We tend to look at those as just arbitrary rules designed to restrict people or cause anxiety.
But the source corrects that interpretation. These rules were not punitive. They were protective measures.
Protective? How so?
They were sophisticated, structural ways for finite, fragile beings to approach an overwhelming reality. The sun, without being destroyed by its intensity. It was proximity management, an act of profound mercy.
So it's asking, how close can you get to the source of all life and power without losing the structural integrity of your fragile self?
Exactly. The source material describes these moments where humans came too close without preparation, and the result isn't always punishment in that simple sense of God is angry. It's a physical, psychological collapse, an exposure without transformation.
Like staring directly at the sun, it wasn't designed to destroy you, but you weren't designed to handle it without protection.
That's it. But the historical narrative shifts. They use this powerful, transformative example of the prophet and the burning coal.
The high-intensity moment.
Extremely high intensity. A prophet encounters this overwhelming reality, is acutely aware of his inadequacy, his impurity, and yet the holiness does not annihilate him.
It alters him.
It alters him. A burning coal, an intense, consuming point of contact, touches his lips.
The place of confession, but also the place of proclamation.
It's intensely painful, but it's cleansing. It's not erasing the person, it's transformation. It suggests the problem isn't the intensity of holiness itself, but the lack of preparation in those who approach it. The fire has to touch the place of brokenness to sanctify it.
Now, this leads to the radical reversal that forms the climax of this whole current. A moment the sources call a theological earthquake.
It's a huge shift.
For much of the ancient imagination, contact with impurity spreads contamination.
Disorder multiplies, decay is contagious. If you touch something unclean, you become unclean. It protects the community from dissolution.
And that logic feels intuitive. We see it in physical law. Illness spreads, spoilage spreads. A bad apple ruins the barrel.
It is the traditional logic of chaos management. But the sources detail a sudden shift in the narrative when a new figure appears who runs in the exact opposite direction.
A radical anomaly.
This figure touches the sick, the lepers, the dead, the untouchable. And instead of absorbing their brokenness, he transmits wholeness.
Instead of being diminished or contaminated by the contact, he heals through it.
The contagion of brokenness is reversed.
And the implication of that is just staggering. The ultimate expression of holiness is no longer distance, separation, containment.
It's transformative presence.
Yeah.
The power that once required walls and curtains and rigid rituals now walks directly into disorder, into chaos and decay without losing its own identity.
The fire doesn't go out when it touches the water.
The fire spreads. This reversal intensifies holiness. It proves its ultimate power rather than reducing it to something harmless like kindness. It insists on its nature as a contagious power, but the contagion is now life, not decay.
This brings us to the crucial point of application. Relocating morality. Ethical behavior is no longer presented as the entrance fee to get into the divine presence.
That was the old proximity management model.
Right. Now, ethical behavior is the outcome of encountering that transformative presence. Transformation precedes obedience. Healing precedes instruction.
And this is why this approach resonates so deeply. It doesn't ask people to just grit their teeth and memorize doctrines they don't believe. It asks them to reimagine the story they are living inside.
And it quietly challenges the opposing forces that are paralyzing faith in modern life.
It does. On one hand, it pushes powerfully against moralism. It declares that holiness isn't about appearing clean or meeting an impossible checklist.
It's about becoming whole through intimate, transforming contact.
And on the other hand, it pushes against reductionism. It insists that reality is not flat. There are forces, categories, and meanings like transformative holiness that cannot be managed through technique or self-help alone.
This current answers that deepest question. What kind of reality am I actually dealing with? It confronts you with something transcendent that will not leave you unchanged. Okay, we've now seen these three really robust pillars of this modern faith media. We have the pragmatic relationship architecture.
The empowering momentum message.
And the deep intellectual visual theology. Now, let's synthesize these. Let's look at the major cultural shift they represent when you put them all together.
The first critical step in that synthesis is realizing these are not three separate target audiences.
They're the same person.
They are the same person, the modern listener, at three different moments of internal struggle. And this entire media ecosystem is built to compensate for these pervasive modern anxieties.
So a single listener might tune in for all three, just depending on what they're facing that day.
Exactly. The pragmatism of the relationship current, that speaks directly to emotional instability. The person who's overwhelmed by choice and failed expectations in their love life.
Then the empowerment of the momentum current speaks to stagnation and self-doubt.
The feeling of being underutilized and perpetually behind.
Mm.
And then the visual theology speaks to conceptual poverty.
The desperate need for depth and meaning when the surface-level answers just don't work anymore.
And what's fascinating is the unified tone shift that connects all of them, whether they're talking about dating or the nature of God.
None of them speak primarily in command language. It's not, you must do X or stop doing Y.
No, they speak in explanation. Look again at why. Here's the underlying structure.
That's critical. The moment you stop commanding and start explaining, you signal a massive shift in the authority structure.
They're assuming resistance is just confusion, not rebellion. If you don't like what I'm saying, it's not because you're a bad person. It's because you haven't seen the structural reality I'm describing yet.
This is the central operational consequence of the whole movement, then. Authority is no longer established by position or tradition or hierarchy.
It's earned.
Earned through relevance, clarity, and perceived psychological insight.
The speaker is trusted not because they're distant or untouchable, but because they seem to understand your inner landscape, your burnout, your anxiety, your specific relational failures, better than you understand it yourself.
And this creates huge creative consequences. Abstract, difficult ideas are pulled down right into lived experience.
The kitchen, the workplace, the phone screen, the therapist's couch.
Religion becomes conversational and accessible. People who would never step foot inside a formal service will listen for an hour on their commute because the message feels intensely usable.
Descriptive of their reality.
But this adaptation, this need to be constantly relevant and conversational, it has to carry significant risks. What are the dangers the sources highlight?
They point out three major risks. First, depth can be traded for resonance. The speaker might prioritize the aha moment, the soundbite that gets reposted,
over the sustained, difficult work of actual transformation.
Second, precision can be softened to avoid offense. The hard edges of theological truth, like the demanding nature of holiness, can be rounded off to keep a large, engaged audience.
And third,
Complex tensions can be resolved too quickly for the sake of an emotional payoff. When faith learns to survive in the attention economy, it is always tempted to become entertainment or optimization advice instead of transformation.
it's the tension between going viral and being true.
That's it. And yet, it would be a mistake to just dismiss this whole movement as shallow. What it reveals is that the modern listener doesn't reject truth. They reject irrelevance.
They're not hostile to transcendence. They're hostile to abstraction that never touches their real life. They're looking for a structure that actually holds up under pressure.
Which is why the source material identifies this fundamental internal shift that's happening. Faith is now being framed as orientation rather than obligation.
That's a profound shift in emphasis, so less as a system you submit to out of fear.
And more as a lens through which you interpret the confusing data of your life.
Less as moral surveillance, that constant monitoring of your behavior.
And more as a structure that protects wholeness, existential alignment. It gives you the coordinates so you know where you stand, where you're going, and what forces are acting on you.
This perfectly explains the heavy internal focus of all three currents. The battleground has shifted inward.
Identity, purpose, calling, transformative holiness.
So instead of asking, did I break a rule today? The listener is trained to ask, why did I react to that challenge with so much bitterness? What does that say about my internal architecture?
These contemporary messages, they aggressively fuse psychology and spirituality. They don't treat the inner life with suspicion. They treat emotional pain burnout, anxiety, attachment patterns as a primary entry point for theological inquiry.
Anxiety becomes a spiritual warning sign. Burnout becomes a moral signal of mismanagement.
And this leads to a strategic relocation of confrontation. Instead of confronting behavior, which was the old model,
They confront interpretation.
what story are you telling yourself about love, about worth, success, or God? Change begins with re-seeing. If you change the story you're operating under, your behavior will naturally follow.
And the power of the three currents working together is just undeniable. They're mutually correcting.
They are. Pragmatism without depth becomes mere technique,
Empowerment without reverence becomes self-worship.
and theology without application becomes abstraction. They form an intentional ecosystem built for resilience.
This entire movement, at its deepest level, it's an attempt to answer a wager.
And that wager is, how do you live a coherent life in a world that constantly fragments you? It trains perception over memory. It demands honesty about your internal states, not just external perfection. It's a new operating system designed for the chaos of modernity.
So we've seen how these three distinct yet interconnected voices, the relational pragmatist building internal architecture, the momentum-focused motivator releasing potential, and the visual theologian recovering the intensity of reality, how they all work in concert.
They're designed to correct the deficiencies of each other, to create a comprehensive framework for navigating modern life.
The final test of this adaptation isn't popularity or views, is it?
No, it's whether it actually produces coherence and resilience over time for the listener. Faith is no longer being positioned at certainty that relieves you of all questions.
But as orientation amid complexity.
It isn't meant to make life easier. Life is already complex. It's meant to make life intelligible. It's training for reality itself.
The sources suggest that this whole modern push for usable, applicable faith, it's not about escaping the world. It's about inhabiting it differently, with greater clarity, responsibility, and depth.
And if faith is defined as the structure that protects wholeness, then we have to look really closely at what we've inadvertently placed at the center of our own lives.
So if this deep dive has given you a moment of clarity,
Ask yourself this final provocative question. It connects all the currents we've discussed today. What structure in your own life, whether it's the specific relationship, your career success, or a daily habit, are you treating as an idol demanding ultimacy instead of as a resource demanding stewardship?